Stephen A., what would Harden to the Nets mean for Kevin Durant?
Well, it would put Kevin Durant in the eye of the storm, because we all know that when Kevin Durant is healthy, he's just a sensational basketball player. I expect him, even if he's at 80% instead of 100, and I expect him to be at least 80%. But even if he's at 80%, he's 6'11" with a 7'6" wingspan and one of the ultimate snipers in this game, one of the greatest scorers this game has ever seen. I easily see him, and I use the word easily, see him averaging 25 to 27 a game. And so I expect him to do his thing, and I think without Harden, the Brooklyn Nets should be the favorites to go to the finals out of the Eastern Conference. I think with Harden, you can literally look at them and say, excuse me, championship. Now, if you're James Harden, it's one of those situations where I know that he loves playing in Houston. No state income tax. The city loves him. Okay, of course, he's been a star there. That really elevated his career once he went from being a reserve in OKC behind Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant to what he's been in Houston. There's no question. But from what I'm being told, he may not want to stay there only because you're not trying to be a part of a retooling or a rebuilding. You want to compete for a championship. You're 32 years of age. You've averaged over 30 the last 3 years. You're one of the prolific scorers this game has ever seen in your own right. You want to be in a better situation. Him and Kevin Durant are very cool with one another. They're former teammates. Obviously, Kyrie and KD are tight. The combination of those three together, it's just buckets. And Jay Williams brought up this very valid point this morning on his show with Keyshawn and Zubin. He said, listen, because KD is coming off that Achilles injury, you might want another individual that's explosive offensively to take some of that pressure off of Kevin Durant. I'm talking about the physical pressure of having to carry the load. I think you could look at the Brooklyn Nets and say, excuse me, title. I'm not saying that you automatically ordain them that with the Lakers, scheduled to re-sign Anthony Davis to a long-term deal in all probability with LeBron James, with getting a Dennis Schroeder and all of that stuff. But can you look at the Brooklyn Nets if they were to acquire Harden and say KD, Harden, Kyrie should not be the favorites to win the title? Who could definitively say that, knowing the game of basketball? I don't think anyone can. I think James Harden would know that. He'd go to Brooklyn, try to win a couple of titles, and then end up ending his career back at Houston for all I know. Basically, that's what you're looking at right now as the situation involving James Harden.
Yeah, I mean, look, the history of the NBA is when you stack MVP caliber players on top of each other on a team, even if the fit's not perfect, you're going to be the favorites because usually that team wins. Fit's not perfect, right? Harden's a ball stopper, Kyrie's a ball stopper. Who has the ball in their hands, everything. On the other hand, you think of KD with Harden and Kyrie. It's like a version almost of what the Thunder might have been had they stuck together and matured all together, right? Because you have multiple MVP and high-level all-stars on the same team. But I don't think it would put the same kind of pressure on KD that he had on Golden State. There's more upside here. If you win, you get more credit, but there's not as much downside. Had KD not won on the Golden State Warriors, Stephen A., a 73-win team where he's replacing Harrison Barnes. You go from Harrison Barnes to Kevin Durant in a death lineup, right? Like, had they not won, that's a disaster for KD. So there wasn't as much upside, there was more downside. Is that more pressure? Or is this more pressure where maybe there's not as much downside, but there is some upside here? I mean, to make it work, to get the chemistry right, to come back off of catastrophic injury, he'll get some upside credit here if they win. The fact remains, if you have two MVP caliber players and a player as talented as Kyrie on your team, you are going to be the favorites in your conference at least.
이번에 준비한 영상 시청해주셔서 정말 감사하고 앞으로 더 흥미롭고 유익한 NBA 내용으로 돌아오겠습니다. 영상 재밌게 보셨다면 구독과 좋아요 부탁드리겠습니다. 감사합니다.